Hi everyone, Abby is with you. Today's video is going to be something a little bit different, I thought, and decided with the recent controversial stuff that we've been talking about on this channel. I would come down and discuss which heroes are healthy and unhealthy for the game, why I think so, why some people agree, why some people may disagree. But before we get into this video, I know that there will be some people that feel personally hurt. And just remember, it's a video game and we want the game to be as the best that it could possibly be. If there's anything Season 6 has taught us is that cheesy heroes cannot be allowed to go on for too long, nor are they should they be allowed to be prominent picks or meta picks to the point where they can dominate the game with such ease. Now, before we start talking about the heroes that are healthy and not healthy, we need to keep because these things can be hard to explain to a casual player or people in low elo simply because they might not understand the game at that level yet. So I'm going to try and simplify some things. We try to do this on this channel a lot. We simplify things to in order to be able to talk about them within that lens. So we're going to be viewing the lens of what is healthy and what isn't healthy from the perspective of if the hero encourages interactability and if the hero encourages player agency. What do I mean by player agency? Is the fact that the person themselves are in control of what the character does, and the abilities don't kind of play the game for you. So we're going to be going through the hero roster and talking about which heroes are kind of the ones that are healthy and which ones are not. Now we'll start with the tank role because this one's kind of a little bit easy, and funnily enough, I would probably say the only tank that falls into the category of being unhealthy is Orisa, because she attempts with what she's able to do with Fortify and her entire kit. It's all about stripping the enemy player's agency, and the abilities kind of really they kind of sidestep some things in the learning curve, and while you passively learn it subconsciously along the way, the execution and skill required on Orisa is very low. I don't mean to insult a lot of Orisa players, but I'm sure this season we all felt incredibly frustrated by Orisa, that it's very easy to pick her and dominate the game. I actually have somebody on my friends list who was legit hard stuck silver for his entire Overwatch 2 life and even Overwatch 1 life, and this season he locked in Orisa and he's sitting in Diamond now. And man, that's a crazy growth. Like, I don't mean to undermine anybody's efforts, but I feel like, once Orisa kind of leaves the meta, he's about to have a very harsh reality check, because or like he's not that level of gameplay on the other heroes, right? And Orisa's the skills and everything that you need on Orisa, it doesn't necessarily completely translate well to the other tanks. So Orisa is unfortunately one of those heroes that I consider unhealthy. uh th- she can be healthy. She can be put in a place where she's a good pick on maps where she can come alive, and that should be it. When it comes to these unhealthy heroes, they should basically be map and extremely comp dependent, but they shouldn't ever be meta defining heroes, because this season we really learned our lesson with Orisa and, spoilers alert, Bastion and Torbjorn, that we'll talk about in a moment, right? So Orisa is somebody that's a little bit unhealthy. She just completely shuts down brawl tanks like Ram and Ryan. She's a nightmare for Doomfist to play into. Granted that you can play around her, but it a lot of people are unable to do that on Doomfist. Junker Queen struggles a lot because, again, the Fortify is just amazing, and Orisa's ability to just constantly spray Junker Queen, bully her into corners and things like that. Again, if you know what you're doing on Orisa, these brawl tanks with Queen, Ram, Ryan, and even I suppose you can categorize Roadhog into this. These four tanks struggle so hard to keep up with her. It's insane. Zarya is probably the only one that can give Orisa a good run for her money, but if you're lacking the complementary DPS to pressure the Orisa can go uncontested, and Diva can sometimes work into the Orisa pick because it's a free Diva Bomb farm. And you could just outpace the Orisa similar to Doomfist, but it doesn't always work out in your favor, right? Maybe sometimes the Diva pick is working, but you're unable to peel for your team or unable to kind of protect them from what the Orisa comp might be set up with. So Orisa is unfortunately one of those heroes that we have to understand she's unhealthy for the game. And I can't wait for the next season because I really just want to say goodbye to seeing her everywhere. And, it is what it is from that perspective. The rest of the tank roles are pretty healthy. Honestly, they all require a good amount of skill to be able to execute properly and good amount of understanding of the game. Otherwise, they get heavily punished and immediately blown up. This applies to Diva, Doom, Junker Queen, Ram, Reinhardt, Roadhog, Sigma, Winston, Ball, and Zarya. Granted that some of the heroes I just mentioned, they're in a little bit of an awkward spot, with Wrecking Ball and Reinhardt being definitely the standouts, but hopefully with Orisa kind of going away next season, these two tanks should be, a little bit more viable. We're going to save damage for the end because from the damage side, there are quite a bit of unhealthy heroes. On the support side of things, now support is a bit of an interesting situation. I would say support, the way you play support and the way support is balanced is so different to what frontliners are capable of that I can't necessarily say there's a support that's unhealthy for the game. Now, if they become oppressive in what they're able to do, which pretty much all the supports can be, like when they're overtuned, then yes, for sure, that support is unhealthy. For example, I think Life Weaver's Tree of Life's current iteration, where it turns everybody into a tank, is just not, it's just not good. We're going to talk about this tomorrow as well. I have this clip that I'll probably play on screen right now. What you're seeing right now is what I don't want for this game. This is how you get people to not play Overwatch 2. And we've seen this with Double Shield, with goats. This is not what people sign up for. It's supposed to be a hero shooter. And at the end of the day, that's what the core should be. It should be about shooting. And we are seeing this insane deployment creep, this buildable creep. We'll talk about this going forward in tomorrow or day after tomorrow's video. For now, I just want to try and keep it into the range of what's healthy and unhealthy. I think most supports are healthy. Honestly, some supports that might be easy to play should never be overtuned. I think one of the ones to always keep an eye on, especially, is Life Weaver, Brigida, um, and Iliari's Pylon. Like these three are just on that verge of, if they get pushed up a little bit more, they're going to be extremely unhealthy for the game. I do think Iliari's Pylon could see a little bit of an HP reduction. It's a little bit too tanky. Even Life Weaver's Petal Platform could see a very tiny HP reduction. Again, it's a little too tanky, especially when you're playing tank and this thing comes up. It feels very hard to interact with unless you have a tank who is capable of contesting high grounds. But other than that, in my opinion, support is fine. Like, I don't think support has unhealthy or cheesy heroes. Mostly all of them do require some form of a brain cell to function and do things. There are some abilities that might be unhealthy. For example, Suzu is really good until you reach the part where it makes people immortal. That's a problem. Life Weaver's Immortality Field is a problem. Ana's Anti-Nade can be a problem, but honestly, again, Suzu kind of counteracts it. So, and you can outplay Anti-Nade as well if you're smart. So these are just some things to keep in mind. Mostly the immortality-based abilities and Iliari's Pylon kind of just doing her job for her. These are just some things that take away player agency because they do it for you, or they negate the other player's effect right away to the point where that other player can now be punished. So in that regard, those abilities might be unhealthy, but from an overall character perspective, support is pretty alright. Honestly, support is pretty alright. They should just keep a close eye on not letting characters like Brig, Life Weaver, go out of control, right? Like otherwise they enable such degeneracy. It's crazy. That's my personal opinion on it. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments that you like what you think is unhealthy for the game, right? Going over to the damage side of things, now this is where the main problems are, right? When it comes to majority, like I honestly think pretty much all the hit scans are fine for the game. Widowmaker might be the only outlier, but if we keep the game in a fast state, Widowmaker just kind of gets controlled by those dive comps and the very fast like rush comps. But when the game slows down, Widowmaker begins to come alive. However, she's being seen less and less. But when she is seen, she can feel incredibly difficult to deal with. So Widowmaker should always be in a state where, she's fine as is. We'll discuss the Widowmaker problem some other day, but at the moment, I see Widow as a whatever. Like, it is what it is. There's not much you can do about it. Like, just speed the game up and she'll kind of, go away, right? Like, similar to how when the game started, like, Widow was just never being played at higher levels of play, because Sojourn was just much better to play, much faster to play, so, and much more easier to interact with as well, right? So, my solution to the Widowmaker problem has always been keep the game fast and we'll be fine. Anyways, now moving on from the hit scan, so Ashe, Cassidy, Soldier 76, Sojourn, Tracer, and Reaper. These are what I would consider the hit scan DPS, even though some of them are in the interchangeable slot of flex DPS with Reaper and Tracer. Overall, I consider these ones to be in the healthy range that it's player has to put in the time and effort to have good aim, to be able to be consistent, and they'll be rewarded for it, right? Now, when you come down to characters like Mei, Sombra, Symmetra, Torbjorn, Junkrat, Bastion, all of them, all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 characters should never be in a position where they're meta defining picks, where they're powerful picks. If there's one thing this season has taught us, they don't require that much skill to execute, especially Bastion and Torbjorn, who just turn a corner, look at the enemy tank, press one button, turn into a Gatling gun or a lava machine gun, and just burst the other person down and then move in and just kind of autopilot from that point on. Bastion's very easy to execute. You know, even with a terrible aim, you can make him work. Torbjorn pretty much has another body that he brings onto the field that also helps him build ult charge. It keeps flankers in check, like Tracer gets hella pressured by the Torbjorn turret. And if you pair that with Iliari's turret, you know, we're again in that deployment creep where honestly it's sad to see what's happened to Tracer because of all these turrets coming up and she's unable to do her job anymore. Again, another topic for another day that we'll talk about the deployment creep and all that. But the problem with Tor Bastion is that particularly these two become incredibly oppressive the moment they're viable, and it's really hard to chunk them down because they're very tanky characters. Granted that Bastion's probably easier to deal with than Torbjorn, but with some of the changes that have come through and with how high healing can be, both of these two characters just feel like tanks. They just feel like these characters that are just designed to completely clean up everything and then move on to the next part. And I don't see them as healthy characters. Now, Symmetra is a map-dependent pick. She's not oppressive by any means at the moment. But when Symmetra does come alive on the maps that she's good on, it can feel very difficult to deal with. There's a lot of things that Symmetra throws at your face that if even for 1 second you don't pay attention to where a turret might be or how the wall splits you up and your team is confused as to how to take a fight or whatever, she can become incredibly frustrating to play against. The same also applies to Mei in this case. While Mei and Sim might not be incredibly oppressive to the level of Bastion and Torbjorn, Sim and Mei can make the life of a tank a huge living hell, right? Like, they might not be that effective against squishies, but when it comes down to a tank player, especially since they're solo tanks now, Mei and Sim, and Bastion and Torm included, can just make a tank player feel like they have no control over the game. It is incredibly unfun, and that's how you begin to lose more and more tank players, right? It's very hard to make these characters healthy, but it's one of the things that Blizzard has to understand, that not every character can be healthy, right? Sombra, as much as I would love to talk about her in this video, Sombra's entire playstyle is being changed into a more brawl-like DPS, so we will not talk about her until after her rework. And then I will probably give her an individual video where we talk about if she's healthy or not now. But from early viewings and everything, I think Sombra she's just going to be like a perma, hack the tank, you know, pressure the tank, move in, clean up with your tank type of character. And it's similar to Reaper in Mei's playstyle. Like, she's very, very brawl-like now. So it's hard to say, honestly, what her current new iteration is going to look like. It does come out tomorrow. So we will talk over there. Pharah is in this weird area where if Mercy's with her, she is unhealthy to play against. She can be very oppressive. But when Mercy's not with her, she's a garbage pick. Like, she just gets outclassed by Echo, and even a good Genji can keep her in check other than, you know, ignoring hit scans. Junkrat's also one of those characters where he's very map dependent, but there was a season, I believe 2 or 3, where Junkrat was a really, really good pick. And because of his extreme high damage capabilities, one-shotting everybody is fun for no one, right? So this is why when it comes down to the projectile DPS heroes, those heroes that are pretty much good for the game are Pharah, Echo, Genji, and Hanzo. Now, I know they all bring in frustration in different ways, but they don't strip player agency. They encourage player interactivity and outplaying one another. So that keeps it on a healthy baseline of keeping the game in a competitive vacuum and not allowing it to spiral out of control where, okay, I press this button, you can't play the game anymore, therefore I win, right? Like, this is, I pressed my I win button and now I win, right? I know some of the heroes do have that, but they're not on that scale of completely ruining the game. I know, like, there were some comments in one of the previous videos where they were like, well, Hanzo can do this, this, and this. Unfortunately, skill issue, right? If you're going to walk in a straight line and make it incredibly predictable for Hanzo to line up a shot and delete you from the game, like, I'm sorry, like, at that point, it's like, just play better. You know, I'd be more than happy to coach anybody that complains about Hanzo, like, okay, how was I supposed to outplay Hanzo here? And it's like, okay, well, maybe playing this character into Hanzo is not the best idea. Or, you know, expand your hero pool and outplay him. Or even just the character that you are playing at that moment, outplay Hanzo. He's not that much of a problem with how high healing is and how tanky tanks can be with the current iteration of the game. Hanzo's in this really awkward come and go spot. He's just it's either he's viable in a season or he's not. There's no in between. That okay, he's mediocre. It's just he's good or he's bad. There's no in between, right? And again, whatever Hanzo does, 𝐒𝐻 just does it 2-3 times better. Same to Genji. 𝐒𝐻 just is like a better version of Hanzo, Genji put together, and Pharah for that matter. So 𝐒𝐻, Genji, Hanzo, Pharah to a certain extent. These are characters that I'm fine with from the projectile side of things to be viable. Junkrat, Mei, Sim, Torb, these are ones that should be kept in check because they're just too crazy. For their gimmicks, for their niche maps that they may come alive, they're perfectly fine. But when they become mainstays into the state of the game, they strip so much player agency, again, especially from the tank role, that it can be incredibly frustrating to play with and against. Because if you don't have it, you basically auto lose if they have it. And if the two of you have it, your tank is in this like, oh god, I really hope we win right away situation, right? I've played this season on Orisa, and trust me, whenever we're playing the mirror with Torbjorn and Bastion, my thought process is I really hope we get the first picks. Because otherwise you just like your whole point of playing Ursa this season is to stay alive. And I don't want to play the game like that against characters like this, Mace, Sim, Torb, Bastion, Junkrat, Sombra, where they force you to just, okay, stay alive. Like, I want to actually go play the shooter game. And I want to shoot somebody, I want them to shoot me back, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, you know, I win that duel. And again, arguments can be made that, yeah, well, they're still shooting you. It's like, yeah, but the amount of effort and pressure that they bring by pressing a few things and not actually doing the shooty part can feel incredibly unfair. And the developers actually acknowledge this in their recent forum posts as well, where they openly spoke about like, yeah, we kind of experimented with these things and we just kind of learned that this isn't good for the game. Now, to be fair, this is Alec Dawson's balance team, and they have done more mess ups than thumbs ups. So let's see what's to come tomorrow. I'm looking forward to the entire balance patch. And I want you guys to tell me, who do you think is a healthy hero and unhealthy hero from each of the roles? And let's discuss. Again, keep it healthy, keep it nice. And if you want to support the channel, you can just do that by hitting subscribe and like because it helps with the algorithm. With that being said, I'll see you in the next video.